Welcome back to Paul.caunce On Construction. As most of us are aware, increasingly, construction today is all about technology. Today's guest is right at the heart of that. Mark Gray of Universal Robots. He's going to share with us the current state and the future vision for construction robotics. Okay, Mark, thanks for joining me this morning. I wonder if we could open up just by, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, so I'm Mark Gray. I'm from Universal Robots. I've worked here for 4.5 years. I started out my career many years ago as an electrical engineer and worked for automation companies and camera system companies, and then ultimately ended up at Universal Robots as their UK and Ireland manager.
Okay, great, thank you. So Universal Robots, it reminds me of a sort of Mad Don Draper 1960s space age when companies did what the name suggested. Universal
Yep.
Robots is right out of that mold. Tell me a bit more about Universal Robots as an organization.
So we've got a really interesting story. We were started by 3 university professors in the basement of Odense University. And Odense is on an island in Denmark, about 2 hours from Copenhagen. And it's now become the worldwide center for collaborative robots. So there's more than 100 robot companies in this one small town of about 100,000 people. And we were started by these university professors to fill into the market where small companies that couldn't get access to large industrial robots, what was stopping them using robots? So they came up with the idea of a collaborative robot, a robot that can work alongside people. And they wanted to name it after something famous. So the word robot originated in a book by an author called Carol Capek 101 years ago this year, called Rossum's Universal Robots. And that's where they took the name from Universal Robots.
That's quite an interesting story. I like it. I used to work for a company who had a similar founding story. It was a lecturer and 3 students, but I like the name of the company. That's quite entertaining. So what are they generally used for, Mark? How do universal robots be utilized in industry?
So the collaborative robot sector is quite a new sector for manufacturing, and it kind of runs parallel to the existing automation that's out there. Everybody's seen the big industrial robots in car plants spraying paint or welding and so on.
Yeah.
But the smaller companies and the kind of tasks that are being carried out by collaborative robots are things like assemblies. So if you look at street lights, most street lights now are assembled because they're electronics rather than sort of lamp-based. So a lot of those are assembled by our robots now with screwdrivers on the end to put all the components together. So there's things like assemblies, there's things like drilling operations, putting parts in and out of machines, most sectors that you can think of, like electronics and food and so on. But particularly in construction, it tends to be around the robots are working on modular buildings. So it's working off-site and actually adding value or dispensing material or removing material from these components so that they can be assembled together.
Okay, so when I think about materials being removed or added, I'm thinking about things like additive manufacturing, 3D printing, that sort of thing. And of course, when I first saw industrial robots in action, probably when I was a kid, huge car plants having initially spray painting done by robots. It's obvious that when we think of off-site manufacturing, that there'd be an application there in the construction sector. Going back to 25 years ago, virtually, Egan's Rethinking Construction talks about adopting methods, particularly from the car manufacturing industry. And I think they were somewhat pioneering, as they were in other aspects of industrial technology. If we think of quality, like Toyota's total quality, just in time, lean manufacturing, that's all come into the construction sector relatively late compared to manufacturing. Do you see any applications for cobots working alongside construction workers actually on a construction site?
So some of the applications we've seen so far where the robots are involved in like drilling activities. So they might be putting drilling holes into in the ceilings of tunnels for fixings and so on. So there's like a kind of a fixture that they'll sit on doing that. Now the advantage of using cobots as opposed to a person for that task is we talk about the 3D jobs, the dirty, dangerous and dull jobs that you don't want people to do. But what we talk about is an equation of 3D to 3B. And the 3D are the dirty, dangerous and dull jobs, but the 3Bs are the 3 benefits. So you get better productivity. So a robot can drill holes quicker than a person can.
Yeah.
You get better quality because the robot's got better repeatability than the human has.
Yeah.
And then you get better health and safety. You're removing somebody from holding a percussion drill all day and potentially injuring their wrists or giving them sort of long-term. So these are the things that we talk about where robots are going to actually take over and take tasks away from people that you don't want them to do.
I'm thinking about confined space entry. I don't know how applicable that would be, but certainly that comes under the dangerous category.
It does. It does. There's lots of different sort of tasks that can be identified to be used by cobots, and it tends to be things like routing out holes into partition walls for socket boxes or mattresses to go into, for holes for vents and so on to go through. So we have a project live at the moment with a modular building manufacturer, and they want to predominantly fill the labour gap. That's the problem that they're facing, is that they can't get people to come and work for them. They've got an increased workload and there isn't a freely available workforce that they can call on. Certainly now with the situation that we're facing with Brexit and the pandemic is that we can't get a free movement of people over from Europe. So they're needing to fill that labour gap. And that's why they're looking at collaborative robots as part of that mix, really.
Surely the capital cost of a robot is immense, isn't it? How does that compare to employing someone from Europe and on probably minimum wage?
Yeah, so typical costs of our robots are approximately the same as employing somebody on a minimum wage. So you can see that you get your payback within about a year. And then after that, the robot's actually earning profits for you because you've only paid for it once. Robots or collaborative robots as a technology ultimately become cost neutral because by the time they've paid for themselves, they're earning money for the second, third, fourth year, and you can actually use that money to finance the next robots that you're going to put into your factory. If we look at where we sit in the UK compared to the European countries, we're behind everybody else in the amount of robots that we have in general manufacturing. At the last count, we had 91 robots per 10,000 manufacturing employees. Now, to put that into perspective, in Germany, they have 370 robots per 10,000 manufacturing employees. So they're quite far behind. What that does is that means that we've got a much bigger potential to expand in the UK and take over the tasks that potentially we'd never looked at automating before.
When I think of the UK labour model, particularly in construction, I think of Mark Farmer's review 2016, Modernise or Die, where moving forward with technology, rethinking the labour model reminded me quite a lot of the Scandinavian or Nordic countries or Germany, where the quality of work seems to be better, the work environment's better. And it's interesting to say that there's a much greater uptake of use of robotics, particularly collaborative robotics in those countries.
Yeah, I think so. I think when you look at how houses are built, certainly in Sweden and Denmark, there's a lot more modular builds, so it's all off-site, and you can control the quality better. When you think about how we construct houses in this country, it's never changed from when we first started. We were originally wattle and daub, and everything was created there on site. Now we're shipping components, and we're battling with the weather and everything, and trying to get everything all consolidated in one particular place. Whereas if you do it off-site, you've got much better control over quality. Your labour doesn't rise and fall. You've basically got a seasoned workforce that are around you that you can control. Yeah. So it seems interesting to me that that's the way that we're going to evolve to make things better. Because when you look at the car industry, when originally before Henry Ford automated his first production line, every car was hand built because that's how they built carriages for being horse-drawn. You just had every town had a builder that would, or a carpenter that would build a chariot that you could then link onto the back of a horse. But Henry Ford realized that a Model T, when it originally was built, was taking 12.5 hours because you just get a team of guys that flock all over the chassis and build it up. And he managed to get it down to 2.5 hours by putting it on a complete production line. And that was the sort of birth of the modern production line. Now, when you think about construction, we haven't really changed what we're doing. And it means there's a lot of opportunities for us to do that, to move to that next level and adopt these new technologies, really.
When I think about modern trends alongside the modern methods, but things like integrated project delivery, where even architectural design to some extent can be automated. Do you think there's a future where we can take an automated design, feed it into an offsite manufacturing process, and those two technologies will be able to work together to fully automate the construction process? Is that something on the horizon, 10 years away?
Yeah, there are lots of people working on these kind of concepts in the UK, and the Advanced Forming Research Centre in Scotland, in Renfrew, they're actually working on 3D printing components that go into houses. They are looking at automating of how modular builds go together using new technologies. It's certainly on the horizon, because if you think about it, it's going to save costs and it's going to save risks. Example, if you're building onto a particular site, you're at the mercy of the weather. If it's too cold or it's too warm or the ground's too dry, you've then got to provide services. But if you do everything off-site, you've got complete control over that process. So delivery and getting construction is actually just a couple of days rather than weeks and weeks and weeks on site. So I think it's coming. We've certainly seen 3D printers working with robots as a technology in this sort of embryonic stage. It hasn't come to any sort of full commercial reality yet, but it's a technology that they're certainly investigating now.
So change on an industrial scale, it could be a topic that people are afraid of, but one way to approach changing technology is to get involved in it. Are there readily available training courses so that people can work alongside robots, or be trained to even design and manufacture robots? What kind of education opportunities are out there for people who might want a career change and think about working with robots?
So there are lots, basically. That the situation is at the moment that we offer training on our products free of charge on our website, so people can log on to a part of our website called the Academy and carry out an 8-module training course. And it's only a taster. It takes about 3 hours to complete, but that opens up application tracks that you can do further training in. And then we only have 2 levels of training with our product. We have a 2-day course called Core, which takes place at one of our authorized training centers in the UK. And then there's a 2-day advanced course that takes place either in Denmark or in Barcelona. But people to learn more about robotics in the UK, it's time at the moment. There's a lot of investment going into new centres that are being set up to train people in this sort of technology. So if you look at places like the Manufacturing Technology Centre in Coventry, the AMRC, the Advanced Manufacturing Research Centre in Sheffield, and then I mentioned the AFRC in Scotland. These are regional hubs where there are specialities in particular sectors, but robotics is a big part of each of those things. So there are lots of courses, and actually at the moment there's lots of regional colleges that have had investment money from the government to set up as a regional automation hub, and that's to support the businesses around them, so people can go there for training, take products to do proof of principle work on, and so on.
Yeah. Well, although robots have been around for a while in industrial applications, it seems like we're really only at the very beginning of how we, of their potential, and there's a lot more to come, I think, in that regard. So thanks for sharing that vision. And of course, I'm going to include a link to your website and the training opportunities that people have for free, which is great. They can get a little taster and see whether it's something they're going to be interested in. Mark, I really appreciate your time and expertise in sharing that with us this morning. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you very much.
I hope you enjoyed that interview with Mark. If you look in the description below, I've included a link to the Universal Robots Academy where you can receive free training on robotics. If you like the video, please hit the like button below, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so when I upload a future video you'll be notified. I look forward to seeing you again on Paul.caunce On Construction.